The morning dew still adhered to the roses when I heard the crunch of costly heels on my garden path. I did not require further investigate to identify the one who alone would have the audacity to don Louboutins while trampling through my father's cherished possessions, Garden Molina. Her speech laced with insincerity. Continued to engage in the soil. I continued to prune my father's white roses. The ones he had planted for my wedding day, which has since concluded in divorce documents. My ex-husband has eloped with the woman currently positioned behind me. Hello, Haley, you are aware of my purpose for being here. She advanced nearer. Her shadow extending across the reading of the will is scheduled for tomorrow. And Holden and I believe it is prudent to address matters civilly. I turned back. Wiping my soil-covered hands on my gardening apron, there is nothing to talk. This is my father's estate, was impeccably rectified by Haley, crimson lips contorting into a sneer. And given that Holden had been akin to a son to Miles for 15 years, we surmised that we were entitled to our portion. The pruning shears in my grasp abruptly felt the same. Holden, who betrayed his daughter with his secretary, is antiquated. Haley dismissively waved her manicured palm. And Miles forgave him, continued to play golf every Sunday until she halted for dramatic effect. My father's death was still a fresh wound that had yet to heal to form a scab. He had been absent for merely 2 weeks. And here was this woman, a vulture, circled what she perceived as an easy meal. My father would not have relinquished his grip on anything, I asserted. As I stood resolutely, he was many things. But he was not foolish. Hallie's insincere smile. Your brother Isaiah appears to believe that we will see about that, faltering. Conversely, the reference to my brother elicited a shiver down my spine. We had not communicated since our father's burial, where he had dedicated more time to comforting Holden than his own sister. Have you conversed with Isaiah? Dear Haley approached, her voice descending to a conspiratorial whisper. We have accomplished. In addition to verbal communication, he has been exceedingly helpful. I grasped the pruning shears, recalling my father's comments from years past. The roses require a firm hand, Maddie, but never a cruel one. The sharpest thorns have a function. Vacate my property. Haley, I have spoken, she chuckled quietly, the sound reminiscent of shattering glass. Before I could forget my manners, your property is wonderful. This house is valued in the millions. Meline, do you believe you would retain everything for yourself, residing in your father's mansion while the rest of us are left with nothing? My father constructed this house brick by brick, I stated, my voice unwavering despite the circumstances. The fury within me intensified. He cultivated every tree and designed every room. This is not about money, it pertains to legacy. Legacy, Haley scoffed, urging Meline to awaken. All matters revolve around finances. And tomorrow, at the reading of the will, you will discover this truth in a harsh manner. She began to depart but hesitated at the garden gate. Additionally, you may like to commence packing, as Holden and I will require it. At least a month is required for renovations before we move in. As I observed her heels on the path and glanced down at the roses, their white petals now, stained with mud where my trembling hands had crushed them. My father had always asserted that white roses symbolized new beginnings at the outset. All I perceived was red. I retrieved my phone and rang the number. Aaliyah would comprehend that it is I. Haley, she visited me. And she is indeed as unpleasant as we anticipated. Can you come over? I need to address an aspect of the will with you. My best friend's tone was resolute and comforting. I will arrive in 20 minutes, do not be concerned. Meline, your father possessed greater intelligence than they realize. Upon concluding the call, I observed a little envelope protruding from beneath one of the rose bushes. Its corner moist with dew, the lettering on it was clearly my father's. And it was directed to me. I grasped it with trembling hands, contemplating how long it had been having waited concealed amid the thorns. The paper felt substantial, as if it bore more than mere words. "Father," I said, examining the letter in my hands, "it appears you have left me one more message." Unexpectedly, the sound of Haley's automobile engine diminished while I remained in the garden, grasping what seemed like the initial fragment of a puzzle my father had abandoned, whatever game Haley and Holden were engaged in. I sensed they were on the verge of discovering they had selected the incorrect adversary. Aya arrived just when she promised a legal briefcase in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other, stating, "I anticipated we might require this." She entered Father's study. I held the wine while still grasping the unopened envelope balanced on the edge of the aroma of pipe tobacco and aged literature permeated the room, dominated by my father's leather chair. I was unprepared to concede to assent. Haley's promised renovations remain unopened. Aaliyah acknowledged the envelope's presence with a resounding thud. She set her briefcase down. "Intending to wait for you," Aaliyah insisted on reopening the envelope following Haley's remarks on Isaiah's assistance in opening it, pouring 2 ample glasses of wine. "Your father was rather explicit regarding specific matters to be disclosed at particular times." My head abruptly lifted. "What do you mean?" She presented me with a glass. "Open the," with nervous fingers. I broke the seal of the mail, revealing a single sheet with thin paper and a little key. "Dear Maddie," I read aloud, my father's voice resonating in my ear. "If you are reading this, then someone has already taken action on the estate. Understanding human nature as I do, I am, presumably. It is Haley. She has consistently evoked the image of a shark, full of teeth yet lacking substance." Aaliyah snorted into her wine glass. "The enclosed key unlocks the bottom drawer within my desk. You will discover all necessary items to safeguard your possessions. Recall the lesson I imparted regarding chess. At times, one must sacrifice a pawn to safeguard the queen. Affectionately, Dad." I observed Aaliyah was already approaching the counter. "Indicating your prior knowledge of the situation." She assisted him in setting it up, indicating for me to utilize the key. "My father approached me 6 months ago. Immediately following his diagnosis, he was fully aware of how events would unfold." The drawer opened with a gentle click, revealing a substantial manila envelope inside. Aaliyah stated, seated on the desk's edge, "USB drive. Before you examine those, it is essential for you to be aware that your father included a codicil in his will 3 days prior to his death. An amendment to the will and trust is forthcoming, and it will effectuate significant changes." I spread the contents of the manila packet, including photographs, across the desk. Haley met with an individual in a dimly lit parking lot, resulting in the spilling of numerous items. Holden entered a lawyer's office that did not include Aaliyah's bank statement email printouts. "Father conducted a more thorough investigation." Aaliyah's smile was incisive. "The USB device has video evidence of Haley attempting to bribe your father's nurse for information concerning his will 2 days prior to his demise." My palms trembled as I grasped one of the depictions of Isaiah's interaction with Haley 3 weeks prior. "Your father's death in Aya has been confirmed, yet see his expression in the subsequent photograph." The second shot depicted my brother exiting the meeting, his visage contorted with revulsion as he held what appeared to be. Aaliyah explained that he retained the check as proof and presented it directly to Miles. Realized he needed to move swiftly when his father intervened. "But Haley indicated that Isaiah was assisting your brother has been engaging in a perilous game, providing them with just sufficient information to maintain their interest confident while assisting your father in collecting evidence of their plan." I reclined into the chair. My thoughts: why did he not inform me? Because Haley needed to reveal her intentions, initially. Aaliyah extracted some documents from her briefcase, which I will examine when I read the will tomorrow. Haley and Holden will believe that their preliminary reading will secure them a substantial share of the. I got up abruptly, my wine glass toppled, soaking the carpet. Aaliyah raised her hand, indicating for me to complete. At which point the catwalk commenced. Your father established a trap. Meline, upon accepting the bequest. They activate a clause that discloses their attempted manipulation and deception, encompassing all photographs and videos. Bribes become public record. I gazed at the evidence laid out on the desk by comprehending the situation. Dawning led them to believe they had triumphed, causing them to implicate themselves. Aaliyah's grin was victorious. The actual will bequeaths everything to you. Accompanied by a trust established, Isaiah, Haley, and Holden received nothing but a highly public revelation of their authenticity. Aaliyah completed her whine as we observed the folks walk by. Tomorrow they fell directly into the trap they made for themselves. Your father's final lesson of consequences. I retrieved his letter once more, tracing my fingertips over his recognizable calligraphy. Even from beyond the grave, he was safeguarding me, instructing me, and assisting me in retaliating. As Aaliyah mentioned, Isaiah gently requested to meet with you tonight. He has additional information to convey beforehand. Tomorrow. I gazed out the study window at the setting sun, contemplating my brother's and Haley's self-satisfied expression. In the garden of all the elements my father meticulously arranged, I instructed him to visit, stating that it was time for a family gathering. Isaiah arrived after dusk, appearing nothing like the self-assured brother who had stood by Holden at the funeral. His fancy suit was creased, and his eyes were obscured by shadows. Exhausted, he paused at the study doorway, grasping a leather portfolio shield. You appear dreadful, I remarked, initiating conversation. Indeed. I am engaged in double agent activities. Is not as enjoyable as depicted in films. He attempted a smile that failed to reach his "May I enter?" I indicated the chair opposite me, which Aaliyah had vacated an hour ago. The remnants of our earlier discovery still cluttered Dad's desk. I observed that you have located Dad's insurance, Isaiah inquired, gesturing over the photographs. Why did you not inform me of what you, while addressing the query? My tone became more abrupt than I had intended, causing him to fall into the required chair to rectify my actions towards you during the divorce, particularly in light of my treatment of you within the situation with Holden. Foolish Maddie. You were my brother, I corrected you, as you were meant to be on my side from my perspective. I am aware that he accessed the portfolio and retrieved a check. This is what transpired. Haley proposed that I speak regarding Dad's lack of sound mind when he executed his final will, which bequeathed $500,000. Toy contemplated betraying my sister as I gazed at the check and then at my brother. Although you did not, I did not cash it. I delivered it directly to Dad. As stated by Isaiah, he was visibly dissatisfied. Not angry, you should have seen his expression. Maddie, that is when he informed me of his plan. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 9 times, each chime resonating amidst the tense quiet. Isaiah persisted in retrieving a phone. Haley has documented every encounter, every offer, and every threat. He had been meticulously planning this for months, even before Dad's illness. When he decided to record Haley's voice, the room will be full after the elderly guy passes away. We will fight the will using your testimony concerning his mental condition and Holden's prolonged association with him. We will get all the information that Meline will remain unaware of what struck her. My hands tightened into fists. When did this occur? 2 months ago. But, wait. It gets worse. He accelerated the video. And now Holden's voice states, we will sell the house, liquidate the assets. Meline can return to her modest flat and her unremarkable gardening enterprise, which she never warranted. I whispered for Isaiah to turn it off, and he complied before pulling away. Haley's motivation for attending tonight was not solely financial. She sought to finalize one last piece of paperwork. Maddie, she sought retribution on you for inducing guilt in Holden, requiring him to pay alimony due to his actions that tarnished his reputation. When you discovered their affair, the memory struck me with the force of a physical blow as I entered my own bedroom and discovered them there. Haley's Isaiah continued. Triumphant. While my marriage deteriorated, she had been his secretary for 3 years and had orchestrated the events. She infiltrated his life and his father's social circle. This document substantiates that she commenced embezzling from his father 6 months prior to your discovery. I seized the document while scanning bank transfers and account numbers were known to Dad, who discovered this information shortly before his diagnosis. As he was constructing a case opposed to her. But the cancer. Isaiah's voice diminished. It was when he commenced planning this instead suggests that, at times, it requires an alternative approach. Said. Yes. Tomorrow will be arduous. Maddie. They believe they have everything under control. Haley has even employed the video crew will film the momentous event of their acquisition of the estate. Despite all circumstances, which elicited my laughter, she employed cameras to document her own demise. Her father would have recognized the irony. Isaiah grinned genuinely. This time I understand that I cannot rectify the last 3 years with a single night of revelations. But I want you to know that I am present today. Regardless of the circumstances, tomorrow. I will support you. I stood and approached the window, gazing at Dad's garden, glimmering with silver moonlight. Recall our childhood when Father discovered us quarreling over the toy vehicle, the red Corvette. While Isaiah accompanied me, the warden instructed us to clean every window in the home, claiming that we needed to learn to perceive things clearly. I distinctly turned to confront my brother, stating, I perceive clearly now. Isaiah, I understand what Father meant. He endeavored to impart knowledge. And even at the conclusion, he exhibited comprehension in his gaze occasionally. The most significant victory lies not in triumphing but in allowing one's adversaries to undermine themselves. I concluded that the grandfather clock chimed 1/4 past, telling us that tomorrow was approaching. With each tick, Isaiah stated that some rest is necessary, as tomorrow will be somewhat challenging. As I observed him depart, I felt the window pane, chilly and firm beneath my fingers. Father had always cherished these windows, claiming they were the house's eyes. Overseeing his domain, the family would observe justice administered just as he had orchestrated on the morning of the will. Aaliyah organized documents on the expansive oak desk while camera equipment was being arranged nearby. Haley's camera team is here, Isaiah remarked as he entered the room. She should be shown practicing her pleasant acceptance speech, with everything prepared. As I inquired of Aaliyah, she tapped her briefcase, stating that the contents are sealed within this envelope upon acceptance of the initial terms. Copies of all evidence will be sent. Followed by a disturbance in the corridor, instructing to cut her. Haley's voice resonated through the door, elevated and exuberant. This is where Aaliyah remarked that the existing chandelier is outdated, and we will replace it with a new one. Adjusting her suit jacket, Haley entered first. Adorned in a black dress likely of considerable expense, Holden, clad in an uncomfortable tailored suit, followed as the camera team trailed behind. Earning more than most individuals' monthly salaries, Melanie Holden nodded rigidly as she adjusted the lights and checked the angles behind them. It was the first instance Dad had communicated with me directly since the divorce. When Aaliyah announced her arrival as Miles's attorney, I will be reciting his last will and testament behind Dad's desk, along with any supplementary documents materials he prepared prior to his demise. Haley nearly leaped in her seat. We are prepared. The preliminary reading occurred precisely as Aaliyah had cautioned me regarding Dad's situation. The estate, comprising the property and firm shares, was to be allocated 60% to me and 40% to another party, to Holden and Haley. I was aware of it, Haley exclaimed while seizing Holden's arm. Aaliyah cherished us excessively to exclude us, however. She persisted in her vocal expression amidst Haley's celebration. There exists a will executed 3 days prior to Miles's demise. Overshadowing her grin, Holden abruptly described a modification. Appearing anxious type of modification, I had breached the seal on the envelope regarding the acceptance of any inheritance under this will is dependent on a comprehensive examination of specific financial issues discovered in the months prior to Miles's demise. The chamber fell silent. Even the cameras appeared to pause. Reflecting the inconsistencies that had diminished in Haley's voice, Aaliyah remarked, sliding the images. Perhaps these will elucidate its triumphant edge. On the desk or this USB disk holding recordings of attempted bribery. These bank statements indicate systemic embezzlement from Harrison Industries, which Holden seized photographs depict his face losing color. Where did you acquire these? Father had quite a compilation of evidence, including recordings of both of you strategizing to oppose the will, was presented by Isaiah from his corner. Haley rose abruptly, causing her chair to topple, predicated on erroneous assertions about his mental condition. He fell backward and commanded, turn off those cameras immediately. As he stood to confront her, the cameras remain. You wish to chronicle this momentous occasion. But remember, you cannot, she yelled. Holden, inform them that this is unacceptable, but Holden remained unresponsive. Gazing at the photographs, especially one depicting him visiting a rival's office with sensitive company information. The documents indicate that the situation is fairly clear. Aaliyah remained as professional as ever. Any attempt to assert a claim to inheritance will automatically initiate the disclosure of all pertinent facts to the appropriate authorities. The decision is yours. Haley laughed wildly. What choice? You've trapped us. I corrected her. No, you have trapped us. Your schemes, plots, and attempts to appropriate what was not yours have culminated in this outcome at this time. This is your fault. She turned to Isaiah and said, you were supposed to assist us. Isaiah shrugged. I assisted. But not you. Holden. She implored, however. Holden was already up, adjusting his tie with trembling hands. It's over. Haley, we have lost. I will not allow that to prevail. That is my daughter. The father's voice resonated across the room, causing everyone to freeze. Aaliyah activated a video file, revealing her father's visage on one of the camera crew's monitors, slender yet resolute, recorded a few days prior to his demise. And if you are viewing this, it signifies that you have shown your true nature. Just as I anticipated, greed is an inadequate instructor, whereas consequences serve as exemplary educators. Haley's mascara dripped in black streaks as she retreated toward the door. This is not concluded. Aaliyah stated that the cops are waiting in the lobby to deliberate on the evidence of embezzlement. I recommend collaboration, as it may influence sentencing outcomes. As Haley and Holden were escorted out, the cameras continued to record, and I sensed my father's presence in every corner of the room. He had organized everything not merely to save his legacy but to provide a final lesson on justice and patience. Isaiah remarked that the cameras indeed captured their momentous moment in the hush. As evidenced by the media, the ensuing circus was precisely what Haley desired, but not in the manner she had anticipated. Due to the presence of the local news van in the evening, reporters lined the street, and my phone incessantly buzzed with calls. You need to see this, Isaiah remarked. Turning increased the volume on Dad's ancient television in the study. Haley's arrest was broadcast on every station. her mascara-streaked face visible in sharp contrast to her luxury clothing. Detectives escorted her to a police car while the inquiry into Harrison Industries has shown numerous cases of fraud. The reporter's voice monotonously continued, prompting me to say, "Turn it off," while I rubbed my. Aaliyah entered abruptly, brandishing her phone, exclaiming that she could no longer tolerate the temples. The situation improves. The district attorney has contacted us, revealing the discovery of offshore accounts and fictitious organizations. Contrary to Haley's assertion, she was embezzling from her father's company while orchestrating an extensive network of fraudulent activities. And I inquired about Holden. Uncertain of the reason, I remained concerned about my ex-husband's destiny. As Isaiah responded with candor, it appears he lacks loyalty when confronted with significant prison sentences. A sudden knock at the study door startled us all. It was the cops. The investigator came, appearing contrite. "Miss Harrison, we must discuss some supplementary evidence we have." I signaled for him to sit as we uncovered other documents related to Miss West's residence. Indicates that this was not her initial endeavor in this type of design. There are at least 3 such occurrences of she aimed after affluent families. Although never having achieved such scale previously, I leaned she would generally integrate into their lives through job or other familial connections, social connections, subsequently choreograph circumstances to obtain access to their resources. The detective retrieved a folder. The secretary post seemed familiar. I muttered that it was not random. "She deliberately targeted your ex-husband due to his relationship with your father's company was merely a means to an end," it made my stomach churn. After 3 years of blaming, self-doubt regarding my unsuccessful marriage has unexpectedly altered my perspective. There is something more at play, the detective continued, stating that they discovered this in her personal files. It seems to be a comprehensive plan for after she attained upon assuming charge of the estate. He presented me with a dossier that chilled me to the core, with meticulous accounts of accidents that may occur following the property transfer, schemes to implicate Isaiah in financial impropriety, including illustrations offer intention to renovate the property, commencing with the demolition of father's garden. I stated unequivocally that she would have killed me, but she would never have had the opportunity. Isaiah snarled while holding the arm of his chair. The detective nodded somberly, indicating that this proof elevates the due to the substantial allegations, including fraud and attempted bribery. She faces a potential sentence of 15 to 20 years. Following his departure, we remained in astonished quiet until Aaliyah's phone vibrated once more. "It is my contact at the district attorney's office." She indicated that she is reviewing the communication from Holden. He concluded his statement by confessing to all allegations, including assisting Haley in accessing private company information. "Previously, did he know about my inquiry regarding her plans following Dad's death?" "I am not Isaiah," she said while reviewing the documents as per her instructions. That aspect, likely known to her, probably indicated that he would lack the fortitude for it. A realization occurred to me. Dad was aware, wasn't he? That is why he included all of this. Aaliyah nodded slowly. He suspected it was the reason for his hiring decision. The private investigator documented everything not merely to save his legacy but to ensure protection. I approached the window, observing the garden now teeming with news crews, while the roses continued to bloom, unperturbed in response to the turmoil orchestrated by their former admirer. "We ought to issue a declaration." Isaiah proposed to manage the story prior to Haley's attorneys attempting to manipulate it. Aaliyah retrieved her laptop and drafted a concise statement on collaboration with authorities requesting privacy during this challenging period. "Professionalism and dignity are paramount." Haley believed that my father would disapprove of my statement regarding the management of a small entity. Smile. "There is one more thing," Isaiah remarked, extracting an envelope from his jacket. "I discovered this in my father's personal safe. It is labeled 'After Justice is Served.'" My hands trembled as I opened it, identifying father's handwriting once more. "My darling Maddie, if you are perusing this, thus, the truth has ultimately been revealed. Do not allow this experience to embitter your heart. The garden still requires cultivation, life requires engagement. I did not establish this trap solely for justice, but for other reasons as well. You could attain liberation, liberation from doubt, liberation from fear, and the freedom to flourish anew in love. Father is outside, where reporters continue their live broadcasts informing the public about the scandal and the arrests amidst the proof of my father's affection and thoughtfulness. I ultimately experienced a sense of betrayal that had not encountered since discovering Holden with Haley 3 years prior. Peace. Thus, Isaiah remarked, breaking the silence. What now? I gazed at the roses outside, then at my brother and best friend. We now reconstruct together. The preliminary hearing arrived sooner than anticipated. None of us anticipated that 1 month after the will reading, I would find myself seated in a courtroom seeing Haley and Holden being escorted in orange jumpsuits. A stark contrast to their luxury attire. Leah grasped my hand tightly as we stood by the bath, asserted the necessity of serving as both my attorney and emotional support, claiming that certain situations demanded both legal acumen and friendship does not necessitate verbal communication nowadays. She murmured, the proof is self-evident, however. I understood that I could not let this harden. As indicated in Dad's final letter, my heart and silence resemble panic as Haley's gaze fixed onto me as she traversed past our bench. The animosity in her gaze was tangible. Yet another emotion flared inside it as well, desperation. Her attorney had been attempting to negotiate a plea agreement, but the district attorney remained unyielding. Despite the substantial evidence, the state wants to present evidence against her. Your Honor, as the process has commenced, introduce into evidence exhibits A through F, which reveal a pattern of systematic fraud and conspiracy extending over 3 years for years. I saw as they exhibited the photographs, the bank statements, and the recordings. Haley's complexion became increasingly pallid with each new piece of evidence. Holden merely gazed at his hands, his shoulders sagging. Defeating the state compelled Matt to approach the stand. Traversing to the witness box resembled crossing in the waves. I sensed the gaze of everyone upon me, the journalists inscribing notes and the jurors inclining forward. Anticipation heightened as Haley's gaze pierced my back. Please provide your name for the Harrison. Could you elaborate on your relationship with the record mine? I took a big breath, gazing directly at Haley. Holden, who was my spouse for 15 years. Hallie was his secretary and the lady with whom he had an affair. They married 6 months after his divorce. They commenced visiting my father to establish a bond with him throughout his illness. Although Haley's lawyer objected, the significance pertains to motive, Your Honor. The prosecutor contended that it demonstrates the methodical structure of their scheme. Overruled. I detailed all aspects of the visits and the manipulation. Haley's menacing remarks in the yard, coupled with the proof my father had amassed, became increasingly apparent with each utterance. Haley's meticulously crafted operational design is deteriorating, affecting Miss Harrison. The prosecutor presented the documents discovered at Haley's residence. When did you become cognizant of these plans concerning your? Haley's lawyer vociferously objected, asserting that those materials are unsafe. These materials outline explicit intentions to injure the witness subsequent to acquiring control of the situation. Your Honor, the judge scrutinized Haley via his spectacles and overruled. I acquired knowledge about them subsequently upon their imprisonment. I responded with a steady voice. As my father harbored suspicions, he collected all the evidence and altered his will to protect me. Anticipating that such a situation may occur, he had departed. Haley abruptly rose, her chains clinking. He was a cunning elderly man. He could not bear to witness his cherished daughter lose anything. This entire situation is a scheme. Miss West, please take a seat. Judge Haley shouted at me, asserting that I believed I had one and that this was not over. I caused your spouse to abandon you. So dismantling your marriage. And I will want to obliterate everything else as well. The courtroom descended into turmoil as Haley's friends hurried to detain her while she persisted in shouting threats. Holden appeared to be overwhelmed, desired to disappear into the floor as the judge's gavel struck, as thunderous as it was. The defendant was removed as Haley was forcibly taken away. Still shouting, Isaiah acknowledged me with a discreet nod in the gallery. All her statements had been documented in the court record. The judge requested a recess, obliterating any possibility of jury sympathy. And Aaliyah swiftly escorted me out of the courtroom in the hallway. Reporters clamored for remarks, but she adeptly guided me past them. Well, she stated, once we were secure in a private setting, I would assert that outburst has irrevocably determined their destiny. Did you observe Holden's actions? Isaiah entered, shutting the door on the media frenzy outside. I realized her true nature and collapsed into a chair. Fatigue overwhelming me, my father was aware. Fully cognizant of her character, Aaliyah stated that those who feel trapped tend to respond defensively. Since they cannot tolerate a loss of control, the district attorney is already texting me, indicating they wish to proceed with extra charges based on her. What is the minimum prison sentence she is facing for the threats in court? Now estimated at 25 to 30 years, Holden may receive a reduced sentence with his cooperation, although he is still facing 10 to 15 years. I reflected on Dad's roses nonetheless blooming in the garden he cherished. He consistently asserted that the truth ultimately emerges into the light, ultimately. About the truth. Isaiah stated that there is additional information concerning Dad's evidence that we discovered this morning. In Dad's study, Isaiah retrieved an aged leather item from his personal safe. The police discovered this during their final search of Haley's flat. It was concealed within a phony compartment at the bottom of her desk drawer. I reached for the journal, but Isaiah restrained it, stating, "Before you read this, you need to. It is evident that Father was aware of this journal," which explains his confidence over Haley's situation. Aaliyah leaned nearer, inquiring if this was what she suspected. Isaiah affirmed it was her playbook, comprehensive records of each family she has targeted, every scheme she has executed, including her initial plans for us. Opened the journal to a designated page and commenced reading about the Harrison family, which exemplifies the ideal. Opportunity, affluent patriarch, strained familial bonds, naive daughter exhibits excessive trust, the husband represents the vulnerable element, readily influenced by flattery, attention. My stomach churned. Halt, you must listen to this. Maddie. Isaiah persisted in reading the completed phase 1 of the marriage. Eliminate phase 2. Sever the daughter's connections to her support system, and proceed to phase 3 to acquire the father's trust. Last phase aims to eliminate all impediments. It was permanent when Dad faced her, wasn't it? I inquired, recalling Dad's abrupt insistence on revising his will. Aaliyah acknowledged that he presented this journal to me 3 months ago, marking the commencement of our endeavor constructing the argument against her. But there is further information, Isaiah remarked, turning to another passage. She was not acting alone. A comprehensive network of individuals is implicated in these operations, including names, dates, and bank accounts. A sudden, forceful knock halted us as the investigator from earlier entered, appearing more ominous than previously. We have been examining M. West's contacts, and he has claimed the discovery of something intriguing. Aspects of her history reveal that she is not who she purports to be. He presented a collection of paperwork on Father's desk regarding her birth certificates, passports, and driver's licenses, all with different names yet identical. Her true identity is Margaret Phillips, and she is sought in 3 states for analogous operations. The FBI is actively pursuing her for years. The name Margaret Phillips impacted me profoundly. The woman convicted of killing the businessman in Florida had his death classified as an accident. The investigator confirmed that it is really the same individual who served 5 years for fraud and has since been released. She altered her name and started over. Your father was her most significant target, yet she was already on her phone. I am contacting the district attorney. This alters everything regarding these matters. The detective revealed that, in addition to facing life imprisonment, they discovered something in her safety deposit box. He sent me with a USB stick containing footage of your father confronting. I thought you would like to see the journal. So with trembling hands, I connected it, accessing Dad's computer. His visage dominated the screen. Seated in the same study, gazing right at me. Haley, I am aware of your intentions. My father's voice was resolute. I have perused your scheme. Margaret Haley's face turned pale as she exclaimed. Journal. What an impressive career you have had. Did you truly believe I would not examine the woman attempting to dismantle my family? I have been aware of your identity since the day you commenced employment with me, company. Then why did I permit your continuation? Because occasionally, the optimal approach to capture a snake is to allow it to believe it is victorious. Dad leaned closer, stating, You are finished, Margaret. All your actions and the pain you've inflicted culminate here. Your demise is imminent. Haley, Margaret retorted. You cannot impede me. Her father's laughter was frigid as he replied. My dear, I have already done so. Unaware of the outcome, the video concluded, leaving us in astonished quiet. He was aware, I murmured. He was cognizant. He established a comprehensive case from the outset. And Aaliyah contributed one that would safeguard you to reveal her complete network. The detective compiled his documents. The FBI wishes to speak with you tomorrow. With this journal and your father's evidence, we can dismantle her entire operation. After he departed, I proceeded to my father's chair. My hand gliding over the weathered leather, he allowed her to believe she was victorious while ensuring she would not be. Isaiah, the quintessential father, perpetually smiled, ensuring no one was ever harmed again. Aaliyah's phone vibrated. The district attorney has just accepted the fresh charges, elevating it to a federal lawsuit. Haley or Margaret will never experience freedom again. I retrieved my father's journal from his desk, the one he had maintained during his imprisonment life, and revealed his final entry. At times, justice necessitates patience. Occasionally, sacrifice is necessary, yet trust in the truth is paramount. Maddie will comprehend that. When the moment arrives, the garden will flourish once more. More robust than prior to the preliminary, Aaliyah softly stated that the hearing resumes tomorrow and inquired if you are prepared to conclude. I examined the evidence scattered around the desk, including Dad's journal and the garden visible through the window. Where all of this transpired, I stated that it is time to conclude this. For Dad, for all those she has ever harmed, and primarily for you, Isaiah. The final crack reverberated through the courtroom like thunder amidst the intense atmosphere. The evidence and the supplementary federal offenses for which this court condemns Margaret Phillips, also referred to as Haley Westlife, to life imprisonment without the chance of parole. Haley Margaret remained steadfast in an orange jumpsuit. All remnants of her previously refined demeanor vanished as she was escorted. She halted past our bench and turned to confront me one final time. I hope you're happy, she screamed. You've ruined it. No, I responded calmly, you did that yourself. The only distinction is this time, your victim resisted. The beast pushed her away as she attempted to react, while Holden was positioned behind her as L commenced his 15-year sentence outside the courthouse. Media inundated us. But Alia's solid presence remained the voice pierced the tumult. My client refrains from further comment, asserting only that justice had been rendered not only for her family but for all families impacted by these atrocities at the residence where Isaiah was present while awaiting a revelation. The FBI completed their examination of my father's study and discovered this concealed item. He presented me with a little box from his desk, which contained a solitary key note: when justice blossoms, inspect the greenhouse. The greenhouse has always been Father's secret sanctuary, a place he withdrew to, the place where he contemplated. I had not entered since his demise. Aaliyah inquired if we wanted to accompany her, but I declined, stating that I needed to undertake this alone. The greenhouse key turned effortlessly in the lock. Inside, the air was warm and rich with the fragrance of blossoming. My father's cherished orchids continued to flourish, evidently cared for by someone. In the midst of the greenhouse, Isaiah observed his father's workbench, holding a large envelope. For the past few months, inside, there was a deed and a letter addressed to my lovely Maddie, signed by Justice. Justice has been served, and the truth has emerged. Nonetheless, my aspirations go beyond mere justice in this matter. In the greenhouse, I cultivated more than flowers. I nurtured hope for you to rediscover your power and flourish despite the challenges. The included document pertains to the vacant lot adjacent to your former flower store, which I purchased on that day following my confrontation with Margaret. It is time for Harrison Gardens to expand beyond our residence. Your ability to introduce beauty into the world should not be confined to a single garden. Recall what I imparted to you about some blooms flourish optimally following a frost. You have endured your winter, Maddie. Now, it is time to blossom once more. With affection, I consistently returned to the house in a daze, grasping the deed and letter. Isaiah and Aaliyah were waiting in the kitchen when Isaiah inquired about spreading he purchased the adjacent lot to my former shop. Intending for me to expand, Aaliyah retrieved her tablet, indicating that business was not his sole focus. The Gardens brand was registered 6 months ago, and he established the entire business. Plans, permissions, and funds are all that is required. It merely needs your and our involvement, Isaiah remarked. I have acquired knowledge of A over the past few months. I have gained some knowledge about gardening as I assisted someone in maintaining his orchids. A knock at the door stopped our conversation. The investigator came with a satisfied expression, indicating that 3 other victims of Margaret's scams have emerged with their testimony and your father's evidence. We are considering the resolution of over a dozen cold cases. My father would have appreciated my assertion that he always thought every truth finds its way after the detective departed. Isaiah ultimately spoke of the truth while attending to the greenhouse. He discovered something more and displayed a photograph of a small plaque on his phone concealed among the flowers. The inscription stated, "For Maddie, who imparted to me that the most resilient flowers flourish in fractured environments." He placed that there immediately following my divorce, and I recognized that he was aware even at that time. Aaliyah stated that she would retrieve her legal pad. The usual glimmer in her eye prompts me to begin drafting the business documents for Harrison. I gazed onto my father's garden, where the roses continued to flourish despite the events that transpired beyond them. I envisioned the future he had envisioned for me, encompassing not only justice but also personal development, survival, while thriving. Indeed, I assert a sense of increased strength than I had in years. It is time to cultivate something new for Dad. Isaiah nurtured his justice. Aaliyah elevated her coffee mug, prompting me to grasp my own while contemplating orchids and roses of truth during periods of conclusion and initiation. Poised to flourish again through the window, the garden radiated in the afternoon sun, each blossom a monument to Dad's conviction that beauty can thrive even in the most challenging circumstances. He had provided me with more than mere restore my future. one blossom at a time.